Hi everyone, it's Emmanuel Kadosh. I wanted to invite you all to subscribe to ILTV Plus, where you can find our daily news and updates about Israel. And not only that, but live feeds, entertainment, our kosher food show, and so much more. Needless to say, your subscription to ILTV Plus helps us grow and create more content while also supporting the state of Israel. Our app is available on all platforms and devices, so I'll see you guys there.
Hello and welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Iran is said to be increasingly on edge as the regime ramping up its nuclear and space programs. Meanwhile, Europe looking to Israel as a new source of fuel, as well as a way to escape Russia's energy-based blackmail. And then later, a novel way to look into the past. Israeli archaeologists partnering with AI technology to discover clues about the earliest signs of fire. It's the moment that the Likud party has been waiting for, just enough support, they think, to overturn the Bennett-Lapid coalition. And a bill to dissolve the Knesset, sending Israel back to elections, is set to hit the floor for a vote next week. Amidst the increasing number of rebellious MKs, even Prime Minister Naftali Bennett now warning that within a week or two, the coalition may collapse. And it seems that Bennett's timing is right on the money, with the Likud party, under former Prime Minister and now opposition head Benjamin Netanyahu, introducing a bill to dissolve the Knesset and hurtle the country back to another election. The bill is set for a vote in Knesset next week, Wednesday, when all opposition-led bills are voted on, and if Nir Orbach, the latest MK to rebel from Prime Minister Bennett's own Yamina party, votes in favor of dissolution, then in theory, there would be a majority in favor of dissolving. That said, it's not yet clear which way Orbach will vote, as he does not want Foreign Minister and alternate Prime Minister Yair Lapid to ascend to the Premier's office. And under the terms of the coalition agreement, Lapid would immediately and automatically become Prime Minister of a caretaker government during an election period, and until a new government takes form, particularly if the coalition is brought down by members of Prime Minister Bennett's own party. Now finally, if the bill passes as is largely expected, then elections, the fifth in about 3.5 years, would be scheduled for October 25th, 2022, the first Tuesday after 90 days from the fall of the coalition. Cutting IAEA camera feeds, ramping up uranium enrichment, and now preparing for a satellite rocket launch. These are just some of the ways that Iran is said to be inching closer to an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of carrying nuclear payloads. ILTV's Asaf Nissan with the update.
Released images taken from high above Iran, now showing that the Ayatollah regime preparing to send a satellite into orbit. The United States claims, however, that such launches violate UN Security Council resolutions, regardless of their intentions. And Washington likewise calling on Tehran to cease all activities related to ballistic missiles, arguing that such a launch shortens the timeline to reach intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Further, despite Tehran's protestations, Iran also sharply ramping up its uranium enrichment to beyond 60%, removing some 27 IAEA surveillance cameras from various nuclear sites, and refusing to return to the negotiations table in Vienna. All further proof that in fact the Ayatollahs are looking to develop nuclear weapons. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price likewise saying that Iran has consistently chosen to escalate tensions and take provocative actions.
به نام خدا و به نام ملت بزرگ ایران یک قدم از مواضعمون عقب نشینی نخواهیم کرد. شما مگر کم قطعنامه و بیانیه در سازمان‌های بین‌المللی با نفوذ سیاسی خودتون صادر کردید؟ مگر راه به جایی بردید؟
Still, while Israel not taking any chances, vowing to continue clandestine missions to undermine Iran's nuclear advancement, still the United States and other world powers maintaining that they're open to and hoping for diplomatic solutions.
So what does Iran's recent behavior mean? Here to put things into context is Commander Dr. Eyal Pinko, military strategist and member of the Political Science Department at Bar-Ilan University. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, starting with the planned satellite rocket launch, the removal of IAEA cameras, and the refusal to negotiate with the P5+1 powers, wouldn't you assume that Iran is and has been focused on attaining nuclear weapons?
First, we need to look on these issues with a very wide perspective. Iran wants and wanted since the 80s to have a nuclear capabilities, military nuclear capabilities, and she acts accordingly for many, many years. What is happening since 2018 when the Trump administration put the sanctions on Iran, Iran a little bit halted the program in order to see what can be done because the sanctions really influenced the Iranian economy, and the civilians in Iran really suffered from those sanctions. But what is happening since the Biden administration, especially since the war in Ukraine, that Iran feels and understands that the U.S. is weak. The sanctions that the U.S. imposed are not really relevant because Iran still selling fuel and moving fuel all over and oil all over the globe, Venezuela, Syria, Lebanon, China. So it's pretty, the sanctions are not really relevant. And Iran sees the way that Biden administration is acting against Russia in the Ukrainian war since the end of February. And Iran says to itself, the US are weak. They're not really relevant for us, so we can do whatever we want. We are moving oil to Venezuela. The Americans are doing nothing. The Americans are shouting against Russia. As I said, they are shouting against Russia in Twitter, and they're not doing anything. So the US is weak. The EU is really occupied also with the Russian issues and the Ukrainian campaign and potential impacts on their economies, especially speaking about energy, oil, wheat, and all the others. So Iran understands that since February, the country can do whatever it wants. They just can do wherever it wants.
So do you think
Putin?
Well,
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you think that Iran was negotiating with the West in good faith and stopped, or were they never negotiating in good faith? At what point did things change exactly from Iran's perspective?
I think
in 2018.
Yes, I think that Iran really went into this negotiation in order not to have a military program, but in order to remove the sanctions. Then going into negotiation with the EU countries, with the G5, was only to show a good faith in order that the sanction will be removed, not because they really want to not to develop the military program. So it just was on the table in order to remove the sanctions. But if you remember, during March or April, Russia said no negotiation with Iran will be without Russia. And since then, the negotiation was halted or a little bit, paused, and Iran understood that there is nothing over there. So Russia will not get into the negotiation. The EU is stopped. So why not?
So what are your predictions then for the future of the JCPOA?
I do believe that Iran will have eventually military nuclear capabilities. The EU is absolutely with the face towards Iran. The EU will to give Iran what they really wants, because especially after the Ukrainian crisis, the EU sees in Iran a very good potential for making businesses, getting oil and all the rest. So I do believe that everything will go towards Iran and towards the ability to give them the military capability. I'm very pessimistic with this issue.
Commander Dr. Pinko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Moving on, after multiple delays, United States President Biden is finally confirmed to visit the Middle East as part of his first official presidential trip to the region. And he's set to arrive in Israel, the West Bank, and Saudi Arabia between July 13 and July 16. First, Biden will come to Jerusalem for meetings with Prime Minister Bennett and other top officials. And among the topics of discussion, Israel's growing regional partnerships with Arab states through the Abraham Accords. Then later, he'll visit with Israeli athletes at the opening of the Maccabiah Games, which, like the Olympics, are held every 4 years. And finally, Biden slated to visit the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial and a United States-funded missile defense system to, quote, discuss new innovations related to the Iron Dome batteries and Israel's new laser defense technologies. Biden's visits with the Palestinian Authority and Saudi Arabia seen as slightly more contentious, however. The PA is increasingly frustrated with Washington's failure to reopen a Palestinian mission in Jerusalem, among other campaign promises. And while Israel lauding efforts to bring Saudi Arabia into an expanded Abraham peace accords, several within the Democratic Party are blasting Biden for ignoring Riyadh's abysmal human rights record. Now, as the invasion of Ukraine continues and the prices of various commodities, including food and fuel, continue to spike, Israel's poising itself to fill the void created in Europe. ILTV's Kayla Eberlin reporting.
Arriving in Israel Tuesday evening, EU Union Commissioner-Chief Ursula von der Leyen now signing new agreements with Jerusalem to help wean Europe off its dependency on Russia, especially as Moscow deliberately cutting off gas supplies to Eastern Europe in efforts to keep Europe from intervening in its invasion of Ukraine. And it seems that Israel, with its underwater power cables and East Med gas pipeline, is a perfect partner for such a move.
With the beginning of this war and the attempt of Russia to blackmail us through energy by deliberately cutting the energy supplies, we decided to cut off and to get rid of the dependency of Russian fossil fuels and to move away from Russia and diversify to trustworthy suppliers.
Likewise, having earlier met with Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi as well, Israel Prime Minister Naftali Bennett announcing new efforts to deal with the global food and energy crisis that have erupted in the wake of Russia's offensive. Such a partnership, though, would not easily be achieved. For now, Israel's natural gas fields link to Egypt, where gas could be liquefied and exported to Europe by ship. And alternatives include the potential construction of a pipeline through Turkey or a seafloor pipeline between Israel, Cyprus, and Greece. But all three options would require major investments of time and resources to develop the necessary infrastructure.
In an incredible and novel use of AI deep learning, researchers at the Weizmann Institute of Science now believe that they've discovered traces of fire from over 800,000 years ago, which would make for one of the earliest known pieces of evidence in existence. But to break the study down, I'm here with Israeli tour guide Anat Harel. Anat, it is great to see you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, how does this method work exactly? Tell us a little bit about this research and what did the researchers learn?
Well, so Israeli scientists have discovered a new way to look at archaeological remains and determine if they were exposed to intense heat. Now, why is that important? Because archaeologists, up until today, when they've excavated and found evidence of bones or rocks or tools or whatever, they only visually were able to tell if they were exposed to fire. Why fire? Because cooking and the use of fire and controlling fire was really the time that we changed from hominids and hominins, which were early people, into real human beings. It's during the time of Homo erectus that this happened, the control of fire. And there is an archaeological theory that's that says that it's because of the use of control of fire that the Homo erectus about 1 million years ago began cooking their food and protecting themselves from wild animals and being able to live in colder and colder climates. And fire really allowed us to become the humans that we are. Our brains grew bigger, our teeth grew smaller. And you can see it as you look at the development of skulls through prehistory. Now, what is this new archaeological or scientific method? Up until now, archaeologists were able to look physically, visually at a piece and say, oh, yes, this was touched by fire, and it's probably about 300, 400,000 years old. This new method can look at a piece, a remain, and date it back about 400,000 years before that, which goes to prove the theory that archaeologists had not been able to really prove with facts before.
Well, so
this goes to prove what archaeologists have been saying all this time.
Well, so here's my question. How do we know that the fire in this case was intentionally made? Because I think that's what you're saying, that that was the big change, where fire was being used intentionally and manipulated. Do we know for sure that humans interacted with these flames personally?
Yes, we can presume it or assume it. Of course, I'm not an archaeologist and I'm not part of the team, but what I've learned is that some of the animal remains were left intact, were not cooked. Others were cooked. And so the cooked ones showed evidence of being under intense fire. And that's what shows some of them were cooked, some of them were not. And that shows that it was an intentional exposure to fire. And it's this artificial intelligence that that they're able to use today to date hundreds of years back the hominid use of fire, the very beginning of modern human beings. And the fact that it was found in Israel, there are 5 sites, I believe, in Israel where we can show the development of Homo erectus. Israel is the place where they walked through to get to the rest of the world. When they walked out of Africa, they had to walk through this narrow strip of land called the land of Israel.
All right, so what does this mean for the field of archaeology and other such research into the past and really, biological, evolutionary science in general? What does this type of learning, this type of technology mean for research?
It was only in the 1970s, I think it was 1974, I believe, where the skeleton of who became Lucy was found. So every few years we discover new remains and we discover a new ancestor of humans. Okay, so Australopithecus and Neanderthals and all kinds of different homos, all kinds of different human ancestors have been discovered every few years. And so it basically expands the science of anthropology, and it teaches us more about where we came from. This big tree that that human beings, that Homo sapiens sapiens came from. It expands our knowledge. Every few years, there are new and newer and newer discoveries. It's fascinating.
So again, now, if proven true that humans built fire and manipulated it and intentionally used these flames 800,000 years ago, which is what this new study suggests, what does that discovery tell us about the history of human evolution? Because I know that you mentioned, of course, that it was suggested that it was about 1 million years ago that we made that change. So, what does this say?
So what did fire do for us? Okay, so our brains are bigger in percentage of our skulls than all the other animals. Okay, why did it become so? Why is it that our teeth are smaller? Why is it that our skull has less very, very strong muscles? Because we chew things that are softer, and all of those little things that throughout time created who we are today. We didn't have to worry about chewing the meat. We could cook it, and so it allowed us to focus and develop in different ways. Our teeth got smaller, our brains got bigger, we got more protein that way. Okay, so the food we ate was better for us by cooking it a bit. All right, and all of those little things put together created who we are today. And so we always wanted to know, when was it that the first Homo erectus discovered fire? Wow. Okay, now we know it really is about 800,000 years ago. How it happened, we don't know. But we know that it takes it back. Maybe in a few years we'll find more answers, but this gives more and more answers to questions we've had for a long, long time.
Anat Harel, thank you again so much.
You're welcome.
Moving on, language learning programs have been increasingly moving online, but while convenient, they often lack that personal touch that students need to make meaningful progress. There's a fairly simple solution, though: add personal trainers to the program. CEOs and co-founders of Ulpan Or, Yoel and Orly Ganor, joining with more. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so tell me about your new system and how you work personal trainers into it.
Okay, so basically what we wanted to achieve is something that is needed nowadays. People want to have something effective, fast, and accompanied with someone that will watch them, that will check that they are working. And that was the base.
So the principle of this program is to have a combination of personal learning and having a personal trainer or Hebrew mentor in our case.
So what kind of assessments are being done, and what happens with the student as they move through this program?
All right.
Okay, so what happened is that they get their special program, just like in sport. Mm-hmm. They are being evaluated, and according to their needs and according to their level of devotion and abilities, they get their personal program. And then they have assignments every day for 10 to 15 minutes.
It's like a Hebrew workout, we call it. Okay.
Which, 10 to 15 minutes, that's not a huge investment. That's something that pretty much
And when you have a personal mentor that observes and supervises your progress, you're committed to doing that. Otherwise, people lay down.
How many mentors, trainers are working with each student?
One mentor for each student.
So it's a consistent person who really gets to know that
He gets attached to that mentor, and mentor gets attached to the student. He actually gets to know him, his needs, his pace. For instance, we had a student recently who wanted to increase the pace, and we asked him why. He said, I want to serve in the army, and I want to come prepared for the service. So we actually accelerated his pace of learning according to his abilities. And it was fantastic.
And the results are amazing, of course.
So how, what sets this system apart from more traditional methods?
Okay, so basically the traditional method, if you are thinking of studying anything, or especially language, you are thinking of either coming to the country or having a teacher, and you are relying on this teacher. Here, it's a system that can fit your needs, meaning the system exists. You have assignments, you have something to listen to, and then you have a workout, and you continue.
So students are setting their own pace. And of course, they can study still from the comfort of their home, okay? But having a live mentor supervising the process, observing them, and giving them, encouraging them, and giving them the, the incentive to continue.
And the meetings are very short because most of the work is done by you. I got the idea for this system, actually, it's a confession, from my own experience during COVID. What I did is I asked a trainer to coach me on Zoom and then on WhatsApp. She gave me assignments. We had a 20-minute meeting, and every day I had to fill up these assignments and write to her. Wow. And I knew that if I'm not going to do it, I will feel really bad, and that's what I wanted to achieve.
Because you have that face there on the other end of the line.
Right.
So almost a guilt trip into learning, but a very effective one.
Right.
All right. Yoel, Orly, thank you guys so much again for coming in and telling me about this project.
Thank you for hosting
us. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected around the region tonight, with more expected tomorrow. Then this evening's temperatures ranging from 16 to 22 degrees Celsius or 60 to 72 Fahrenheit. And tomorrow, the weather heating up further, with top temperatures climbing to 36 degrees Celsius or 96 Fahrenheit. Very hot. All right, that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel and around the world, check out our website at ILTV.tv, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter and join us on our streaming platform, ILTV+. You can catch that across all of your devices as well. I'm Aaron Porras. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.
Hi everyone, it's Emmanuel Kadosh. I wanted to invite you all to subscribe to ILTV+, where you can find our daily news and updates about Israel. And not only that, but live feeds, entertainment, our kosher food show, and so much more. Needless to say, your subscription to ILTV+ helps us grow and create more content while also supporting the state of Israel. Our app is available on all platforms and devices, so I'll see you guys there.